Welcome to InappropriateFolktales.com. Here's your host, Sean Buvala.
A long time ago, there was a woman and her friends gathering water to drink from a river. When along came an old man, disheveled, his belongings thrown over his shoulder, and he looked at the women, and he said, "Would one of you give me a drink?" Well, most of the women said, "No, this is our water. We have done the work. You do not deserve it." But one woman looked at him and said, "Old man, why do you travel?" And he said, "I am very ill, and I decided that if I walk long enough, eventually, my illness will leave me." She said, "I will give you water. Here, drink from my pitcher." And so he did. And then she said, "I have an extra cot at home, and you may come and sleep there. Join me and my husband and my child in our home. I will give you something to eat." He said, "Well, you indeed are a blessed woman." And he went to their home. When he arrived, the husband asked the wife, "Why is this old man here?" And she said, "Because he is old and sick, and he is traveling, and we will give him hospitality." The husband said, "Very well, let us set the table." And they asked the old man what it was that he wanted to eat. He said to them, "I can only eat the flesh of a baby." Well, in hospitality, the guest is king. And so they took their one and only child, and they prepared it and cooked it and fed it to the old man, who ate it. And then they all went to bed. The next morning, there was a sound in the home that awoke the wife and her husband. It was the sound of a crying baby. The husband looked at the wife and said, "What is that sound?" She said, "I do not know. The wizard ate our baby last night. I don't know what that sound is." But when they ran up to where that sound was coming from, there, back in the crib, was their very own baby. And the husband and wife looked at each other, and they knew that they had hosted a wizard who had reconstituted the baby and given it back to them as a sign of their hospitality. In the meantime, the old man continued on his journey when he came upon another man who was tilling fields of brambles. And he called out to the young man and said, "Why do you work in the field so?" "Well, I must prepare this land for farming." And then the wizard, with a slightly secret hand gesture, made a motion, and the field was filled with vineyards. And he said, "Well, young man, it appears that you have all the vineyards that you need." He continued on his journey until he came to another man who was gathering what appeared to be firewood from a barren forest. "Young man, why do you gather that firewood?" "So that I may build a future for myself here." And again, that wizard made a slightly secret hand motion, and appearing there in the fields was now an orchard of apples. "Well, son, do well with all of these apples that have appeared before you." As the old man continued his journey, he came upon another young man who was carrying huge boulders and rocks on his back. "Why, son, do you work so hard with those boulders?" "Well, I must clear a space for me to build my fields." And with that, the wizard made a slightly secret hand motion, and there, appearing in the fields, all the rocks had been turned to sheep, and now the young man had an entire flock of sheep to him. Well, the old man continued his journey, and he walked for a year. And after 1 year, he said to himself, I think that I feel better. I shall make my way home." And so he began his journey back the way that he came. When he came upon the young man who had been carrying rocks on his shoulder, he came upon that young man now with lots and lots of sheep, and there was the young man having a feast upon one of those sheep. The old man went to him and said, "Young man, may I have just a morsel of that food?" The young man said, "Have you done anything to help me raise these sheep?" "No, be gone with you." The old man said, "For not even a moment of charity may I have a morsel." "No, be gone with you." Well, the wizard made a slightly secret hand motion, and all of those sheep turned back into rocks. He continued on his way until he came to that beautiful apple orchard, when he said to the young man who was gathering the apples, "May I have an apple? I am hungry." "No, you may not," said the young man. "I am the one who gathered all of these apples. You may have nothing at all. Be gone with you." And with that, the wizard made a slightly secret hand motion, and the orchard turned back into barren forest. He continued his way home until he came to the vineyards, and there, out in the vineyards, there were servants gathering grapes. And he said to one of the servants, "May I have some grapes?" The servant said, "Let me go and ask the master." Well, after some time, the servant returned. He said, "No, the master says you should be off. You may not have even one tiny grape." And with that, the wizard made a slightly secret hand motion, and that field turned back into brambles, and the vineyard was gone. Finally, he arrived back at the home of the family who had had the baby, and whose baby had come back to them. As he approached their home, the husband and the wife saw the wizard and ran out to greet him as if he were an old friend. "Oh, come back into our home. Please sit, be with us for a while. Let us give you food, let us give you drink." And the wizard said, "Well, that is the way that one should be hospitable. And from this day forward, let me tell you, every day 500 gold coins will appear beneath your couch. Gather them up, and soon you will be rich." And with that, the old man went on his way. But the husband and the wife and their baby, well, they lived rich and happy ever after.
You've been listening to Something Uncomfortable from InappropriateFolktales.com. Copyright 2016. All rights reserved. For more information, visit us online